Hi everybody, my name is Courtney Lopez and I'm going to tell you my story of Hydrops and how the Hope for Hydrops team came together. So on October the 6th, 2015, we went for a 20-week ultrasound and everything went well. We found out we were having another little girl that would make two, and the technician didn't have anything terrible to say. She told us the sex and told us to have a good time or a good night. And we went home and celebrated my husband's birthday. And it was a good evening. And then the following day, I got a call from my OB/GYN to tell me that they had seen some images in the ultrasound that were a bit concerning, and they wanted to send me to a specialist to get a higher end picture, higher resolution imaging of what was going on and see what was happening with the baby. It was a pretty scary phone call, very vague. I had no idea what it could be. I'm sure she didn't want to frighten me, but I think it's sometimes just as frightening to get something that vague. So I spent the drive home crying. Got home and told my husband about the phone call, and made the appointment for the very next day. And we went down, and the specialist took some images and found that the baby had a pleural effusion, bilateral pleural effusion. And for those of you that don't know, a pleural effusion is an accumulation of pleural fluid, and in Hannah's case it was on the left side in her chest. So it was where the lung would be as it's developing. In her case, the lung was still growing, so it was in that space there, and it was putting pressure, a little bit of pressure on her heart. And what the OB explained is that this is oftentimes an indicator of some sort of a birth defect, and they recommended that we consider termination. But that just was not an option for us. We were committed to this baby that had already spent 20 weeks growing inside of me, and we'd already picked a name for her, and we were excited. So we weren't ready to give up. We weren't ready to do that. So we proceeded with the pregnancy. We set up visits with the new OB every 2 weeks so that we could monitor the amount of fluid, see if it was increasing, or hopefully, what we were hoping was that it would resolve itself, which is sometimes the case. The first couple visits, the fluid seemed to be about the same, and one visit even actually it looked like it had decreased just a bit, which is great. We were positive, we were excited that this was going to work out the best way possible. So we were moved to once a month appointments, but that only lasted for one appointment because the very next time the fluid had increased and was putting a little more pressure on the baby's heart. So at that point we went back to twice a week visits, and I just did a lot of personal research. I really wanted to understand what was happening to the baby. I wanted to hear success stories. I wanted to know what I may be facing, what the baby may be facing down the road. I'm the person who wants all of the information, whether it's good or bad, so I can be prepared. So that's when I first came across the word hydrops. And it wasn't part of our diagnosis at that point. So I read about it a little, but I didn't focus on it too much. I just kind of made a mental note that this might be something I want to listen for and pay attention to if it ever came up. And within a couple of weeks, the word was brought up, but we didn't clearly have a hydrops diagnosis at that point. The baby had fluid in her chest, and I also had an excess of fluid in my amniotic sac. hydrops is when there's an accumulation of fluid in 2 or more pleural spaces within the body. So technically it was not hydrops because the baby only had fluid in one part of her body and the other fluid was around her. So it was a tentative hydrops diagnosis. They wanted to see if perhaps I had gestational diabetes, because that can often be the cause of the excess fluid within the mother's body. But that came back negative. So they really weren't sure why that fluid was accumulating as well. Around early December, we were referred over to UCSF in San Francisco to talk about possibly placing a fetal shunt, which they do in utero. So they do a procedure while the baby is still inside, and they place a small shunt. In Hannah's case, it would have been on the side of her chest to drain the fluid and alleviate some of the stress that fluid can be having on the baby's organs. But we were not a good candidate because of the fact that I had all of the other excess fluid in my body. There was a concern that it would cause premature birth. It would send me into labor almost immediately. And then the baby would be born much sooner than maybe necessary because of the fact that she wasn't super high risk just yet. So we were sent home, and we were seen twice a week. One day we would have a non-stress test to check the baby's heart and make sure it was performing well and not under too much stress. And then a couple days later there would be another ultrasound to just watch that accumulation of fluid and see where it was and how it was doing. At one point I was sent to the hospital because they found that while they were watching the baby's heart, I was having contractions. I was unaware that any of it was happening. I didn't feel like I was having contractions. So they sent me to the hospital. I was given steroids, but there was no indication of any preterm labor. So they went ahead and sent me home, and we just kept monitoring. And very soon after that, within maybe 2 weeks at our 30-week ultrasound, they found that there was a fluid accumulating in the baby's abdomen as well. So that was when we had our official hydrops diagnosis. And it was immediately sent to the hospital and given more steroids to try to help with that lung development that wasn't really happening because the fluid was in the way. And to help the baby have a better chance, because she was going to be born at 31, 32 weeks. So they really wanted to give her her best chance possible. So needless to say, after some back and forth, with the hospital and some ultrasounds telling them, oh, the fluid's not there, oh, the fluid is there, they finally delivered her at 32 weeks gestation on December the 29th. And she came out weighing 5 pounds, 8 ounces. They immediately took her away and placed a chest tube to start draining the fluid. And I think within the first couple of hours, she was down to 4 pounds, 11 ounces, if that gives you some indication of how much fluid was inside of her. So the chest tube remained in for probably about 2 weeks and drained the fluid. Luckily, the fluid did not continue to accumulate, so she didn't appear to have any leaks in her lymphatic system, which is oftentimes what can cause these types of events. So that was great. It was good to know. The genetic testing came back, and the only anomaly that they found is that she has an inversion of her number 9 chromosome. But there's no studies that show that is an indication of any problems that she'll have in the future. So it was great to hear. She's a strong little girl, and she fought really hard, and she's a miracle, because a lot of the babies that go through this don't survive. So I was really blessed to have such a great team to support us and get us through what was really a very difficult time. And I think the hardest part of the entire experience was the feeling of helplessness. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing my husband can do. And you just have to wait and hope, pray. And for so many people, the outcome is death. I mean, these poor babies, they die. And I was so lucky to get to keep my little girl. And so after we were done with the NICU, and after I was home and feeling stronger, I went online and I reached out to a Parents of Hydrops support group that I'd found. And I was looking for other moms in my area, in the San Jose, California area, Bay Area, that might be interested in joining me and doing a walk with the March of Dimes. I just wanted to start a team and do a little walk and feel like I could do something, because I'm not a scientist by any means. I'm not going to find a cure for hydrops myself, but at least I could do something that made me feel like I was helping in some way, even the most minuscule, tiny way. So I reached out and found that nobody on this support group was in my area. In fact, it seemed like most of us were pretty spread out. And one of the moms had asked if, maybe we could do a national team and set something up between us. So I reached out to my local points of contact here in San Jose, and we created Hope for Hydrops. So we have 47 teams in 26 states, and a lot of the teams are like mine, just one family who is teaming up with their own friends and family to raise money. And all of the Hope for Hydrops teams are connected through the March of Dimes. So all of our fundraising is being accumulated into one large pot. And the hope is that not only together as one cohesive unit, one bonded team of strong moms and dads, the hope is that not only can we raise a great amount of money to go to research to help these babies, but also that we can draw some more attention to hydrops, because most of us, I would venture to guess, probably almost all of us that have been through this had never heard of this condition before. And nobody that we knew had heard of it either. So it's something that first makes you feel alone, and second makes you feel hopeless. And I can't speak for everyone in the whole national team, but I would think that we want to change that. We want to change the awareness for hydrops, and we want to change the conversation. And so that's what I hope that we're doing. And I hope that, if this team or these videos can reach out to other moms going through the experience and bring them in and help give them a sense of unity with somebody else, and take away that that feeling of solidarity and aloneness. The night, it's great. And I think that we may not change the world today, but hopefully we're making it a little better. So that's my story, and thank you.